for joining. Thank all of you for joining. Without further ado, I think actually, let me take the prerogative to introduce Pontien first. You know, he's new. I mean, I want all of us to welcome him. He's the chief economist in the government of Burundi. So Pontien, welcome to these esteemed colleagues who are here to exchange ideas and support each other. So you have a resource that you can count on as you begin to learn how to do this job, which is not obvious. So welcome. Now, with that, let me just take the opportunity to introduce Caroline and Boniface to share with us the latest results from the Afrobarometer. This is an important African institution and survey because it actually covers a lot of countries in Africa, and it is one of the best ways of actually capturing the pulse of the continent, especially among its youth. So we're delighted to have them come today and present to us what the latest mood of the population in Africa actually looks like. So, Caro and Boniface, over to you.
Thank you, and thank you for really having us. I will take the lead, and then Caroline will come in and share, I think, the main set of present, findings from the Afrobarometer. It is a pleasure. It's a pleasure really for us to be here and share, as the chair pointed out, citizens shifting policy priorities and evaluations of government performance. Sharing, I think, some of the new evidence from our most recent surveys, which were conducted over the period 2021 and 2023. So we, Caroline, if you could shift to the next slide, please. So for the benefit of, I'm quite aware, well, we are quite aware that quite a lot of you are already familiar with Afrobarometer, but for the benefit of those who are new, Afrobarometer is a Pan-African survey research organization providing reliable data on the experiences, evaluations, aspirations of African citizens regarding democracy, governance, and quality of life. I'm sure we are all aware that for a long time, I think we've had experts speaking on behalf of the citizens of Africa. In Afrobarometer, we assume the experts are the ordinary, the citizens themselves. So our goal is to give these citizens, the African publics, a voice in policy and decision making with a set of 3 key objectives. Firstly, to gather high quality data in all the countries where we are currently working, but we are also interested in knowing that just having data without sharing it really is meaningless. So we also have as our second objective the goal of sharing data as well as the findings as widely as possible with policy actors, the media, and of course the citizens themselves. And then we also want to build the capacity of doing surveys. In terms of our methodology, we have nationally representative sample sizes of adult citizens. By adult, I think we're looking at those aged 18 and above. And all our surveys are done through a face-to-face interviews in the languages of respondents' choice. So we do translate, I think, all our questionnaires into languages that are spoken by at least 5% of the populations of any given country. We use a standard questionnaire, so this does give us a possibility of comparing across countries, but of course, we also do carry questions from one survey round to the next, so this does allow us to do over time comparison. The sample sizes range between 1,200 to 2,400, and this gives us margins of error of plus or minus 3% for sample sizes of 1,200 and plus or minus 2 percentage points for sample sizes of 2,400. We started when we started off in 1999. we started with 12 countries, but over the years, we've progressively expanded, and we're covering really as much of the continent as possible. Currently, we are in 39 countries, although we have conducted surveys in up to 42 countries. And this coverage really covers up to, more or less about 80% of the population of Africa. Of course, we do have the goal and objective of reaching out to the countries where we're currently we're not working in. So we're constantly also exploring, I think, options for covering some of the countries, but you can see in white there on the map where we are not present. Next slide, please, Caroline.
Yeah, sorry. There we go.
So as I said, I mean, we, to allow for overtime or tracking of trends, we do have a series of questions that we track over time. So if, in each and every survey round, we do carry questions on the economy, and this is really quite a wide range of topics on the economy, on democracy, and we do have as Afrobarometer a signature, what we call demand and supply of democracy, looking at whether African citizens want democracy, and then on the supply side, asking whether they are getting the type of democracy that they want. We also do have a series of questions on elections, and sometimes we do have extended modules on elections, especially when we conduct pre-election surveys. We have questions on government performance and some of the findings, both government and leadership performance, and we will be sharing some of the findings from these two batteries of questions this afternoon or this morning, depending on where we are. We do have questions on trust of government institutions, as well as interpersonal trust. We also, on the governance side, do have a tracking module on corruption. We gather data on ethnicity as well as identity, as well as questions on poverty, and specifically, especially on poverty, we do have as our signature, again, product, what we call the Lived Poverty Index, that draws on, I think, questions in the survey on deprivation. We do have questions, an extended module questions on political participation that assesses the extent to which African citizens are taking part in political affairs. We do have questions on infrastructure, both factual as well as attitudinal. So on the factual side, our enumerators and our survey teams do capture data on the availability of infrastructure in the enumeration areas where they go to collect data. We also do have questions on tolerance as well as inclusion, on media access, in terms of the primary source of news, as well as media freedom and related questions, as well as questions on availability of social services and the extent to which citizens, the ease with which ordinary African citizens access social services, as well as their experiences with the quality of the services, as well as whether they are being asked to pay to bribes to access the services. But every now and then we do bring in special topics, some of which were in the previous survey round, and we will, I think, we will be sharing also towards the end of this presentation our plans that show when we are planning to start our 10th round of surveys. Some of the topics, the special topics include gender equality and gender-based violence, police professionalism, child welfare, climate change, and environmental governance, which is increasingly becoming quite a major issue, not only in Africa, but of course the world over. Questions on globalism as well as China in Africa. We will be having, I think, in the upcoming round, a new module on poverty, cost of living, an extended module on migration, trade, as well as views on open borders, as well as an extended module on access to justice. The access to justice module is one that we bring in our surveys, I think, from time to time, and we'll also be asking questions on sexual and reproductive health rights in the upcoming survey as part of some of the new topics that we are bringing in. So I will be handing over to Caroline to take it up from here and share some of the key findings. Caroline, you could, Caroline will be walking us through some of the key findings, and she'll highlight policy priority rankings, shifts in policy priorities, as well as ratings of government performance from different angles. And then we'll wrap up with a discussion on our plans for Afrobarometer for the upcoming year, as well as I think discussions on the opportunities for the members in this meeting to engage with Afrobarometer. So Caroline, if you can take it up to discuss some of the findings with the members. Over to you, Caroline.
Great, thanks very much, Bonnie, and thank you to the team at the bank and to all the people participating today for joining us. We appreciate the chance always to share some of our findings. As Bonnie mentioned, we're going to be talking today mostly about one particular area within our findings, which is looking at what citizens tell us about their policy priorities, and then also some aspects of ratings of government performance. You'll have seen from what Bonnie just showed you that we actually have data on tons of topics and lots of different ways to cut and look at that data. So what we're really giving you today is a kind of a snapshot of some key findings. I could tell you that we easily have 100 charts on just covering the topics we've got here today. So this is just a selection, but we certainly invite people who want to follow up and see more of that detail that we don't have time to show you to get in touch with us and follow up so we can show you more of what we're doing. So first off, one of the key questions that we've had in the Afrobarometer since the beginning is asking people, in your opinion, what are the most important problems facing this country that the government should address? We've been asking it, I think, since the very first round, if I remember correctly. And we give people the opportunity to give up to 3 answers. So what we've shown here is the percentage who gave each of the answers listed on the left as one of their 3 answers. So the total is more than 100% because people could give up to 3. So you can see clearly, and this has been a pretty consistent pattern throughout time, that unemployment tops the list as the top issue. But we'll look at how some of those things have changed over time. That's closely followed this time around by management of the economy. So economic issues definitely first and foremost in people's minds, but also a lot of social service type issues that follow close behind. Health, mentioned by 27%, water supply and infrastructure and roads by 22% each, education 20, crime and security 20. And you can see then food shortage and famine and poverty destitution, two kind of closely linked topics, following at 15 and 12%, electricity and corruption. So that gives you across all 39 countries a view of how people think about things. This just regroups those numbers by different categories, just so you can sort of see that the economics issues over on the left in orange, clearly the top priority, but not so far behind government services, water supply, education, electricity, and then also over on the right is its own category, health. So government services, social services, also very high priorities on people's agenda. Governance comes in just behind that. And then food, agriculture, and infrastructure issues, also important, not quite at the same level, but high priorities for people. What we'll do in this section now is to break these numbers down in a few different ways so you can get a sense of the different ways we sometimes can look at the numbers. And again, this is just kind of a sampling of some of the things we can look at. One way we break this down is just by urban-rural location. So this is again across all 39 countries, but you can see that there's actually some pretty stark differences between rural areas in the yellow and urban areas in the blue. So those top issues on the aggregate agenda of unemployment and management of the economy are even higher priorities in urban areas, but somewhat lower in rural areas. In rural areas, you see health and water supply coming in as the top issues. I think we'll see this consistently that rural areas and poor areas tend to prioritize the social service type aspects, and wealthier areas, more urban areas, tend to emphasize the economic aspects somewhat more. You can see one of the biggest differences is on water supply, which is a big issue in rural areas, significantly less so in urban areas. Some of the others coming up fairly even, but food shortage, famine, somewhat higher in rural areas, farming, agriculture, much higher, of course, in rural areas, not surprising, but some real differences between how people view this. And I'd say, and I don't have this number at my fingertips, but about 60% of our sample is rural and 40% urban, I want to say. That is distributed, our samples are distributed, as Bonnie mentioned, in proportion to population size. So the rural proportion of our samples should match the rural proportion of the population in the countries we surveyed. We can also break these most important problems down looking by poverty level. So on the left, in the light purple, are no-lived poverty, people with no-lived poverty. This is an indicator developed out of Afrobarometer data that asks people how often over the past year they or anybody in their family have had to go without food, enough clean water, medicines or medical care, cooking fuel, and cash income. And we combine that into an aggregate indicator of poverty. We normally break that down into 4 categories, from the lowest to the highest. This just shows you the lowest category, those with no lived poverty, and the highest category on the right, those with high lived poverty. And you can see, again, some really stark differences. Both groups pretty similar in terms of their prioritization of unemployment, but management of the economy, a higher priority, again, among those who are better off with no lived poverty, whereas the social services, health, water supply, ranking higher among those experiencing more poverty. Again, food shortage and famine, of course, more prevalent among those with experiencing poverty, but also electricity and some of the other areas that dominate in the high lived poverty areas compared to those with no lived poverty. We can also look at how the prioritization of these different categories has changed over time. This compares, so the previous slides we've been looking at have looked just at round 9 surveys. Those are the ones, as Bonnie mentioned, that were completed between 2021 and 2023 in 39 countries. We have 30 countries that we can compare over the last decade. That goes back to our round 5 surveys in 2011 to 2023. We have 30 countries that have been in all the rounds between round 5 and round 9. And this is how the prioritization has changed. You can see that across many categories, there's small differences, but not large ones. But there's a few categories that stand out as having shown significant change. One positive indicator is that poverty and destitution down here in the middle has dropped significantly from 21% to 12% in 2011 to 2013, round 5, to just 12%. So quite a significant drop in prioritization on that issue. In terms of increases, we see a quite substantial 7-point increase in crime and security as a priority. And the other one that really shows almost a doubling, management of the economy, up at the top of the chart. In 2000, in round 5, it was only 16% raised that as a priority issue. It's moved up to 30%. So economic concerns definitely becoming more paramount in people's perspectives. Another way we can look at this is to take it down to the country level. And we've got just a few examples here out of all the countries that we have, but wanted to show some interesting changes here. This is Mali and Burkina Faso, and the blue are the priorities in 2011 to 13, round 5, and the orange are the priorities in the most recent surveys. And you can see from the arrows where there's been large changes in red and large decreases in green. One of the things that's notable about Mali and Burkina Faso is that food shortage famine in Mali was and continues to be the highest priority. In Burkina Faso, it's been the second highest priority. I'll just note that these are ordered according to the current level of priority. So according to the orange bars, the round 9 priority levels. What's really changed notably in both cases is what's happened with crime and security. You can see that in Mali and in Burkina Faso, this issue has shot up from being quite a low priority back in 2011 to one of the top, either the top or the second most priority in 2013. So for reasons I think that will be obvious to people who know the region, those have both really changed. You can also see in Mali that health and education come up, but what's really changed is that poverty, destitution over here on the right, and political instability and ethnic tensions have really dropped. Now, note that the most recent Mali survey has come post the series of coups. In a period that's under military rule, but more stability. So that's one of the things here that you see. In contrast, in Burkina Faso, we see that political instability and ethnic tensions has actually been one of the categories that's increased recently. But water supply, education, and health as priorities have all decreased. And I think looking at those, and thinking about why some categories decrease and others increase, are categories decreasing because problems are being solved or because even more serious problems supplant them? I think in Burkina Faso, we might be seeing that happening, that the instability and problems in the country have displaced issues like health and water supply as people's top worries. You see a little bit different pattern when you look in countries that have been more stable over recent years, like Malawi and Kenya. Taking Malawi to start with, one of the things that I think we find really notable in Malawi is that management of the economy, you can see over on the left, has really increased quite substantially over the last decade. And the things that are decreasing are some of the indicators of what we've seen of that tend to be stronger in rural areas and among poorer populations: food shortage and famine, and water supply, health. Some of these things have dropped in Malawi, and it is perhaps suggests in Malawi something a little bit different from what we saw in Burkina Faso. That is that as people's situation improves somewhat, it seems that they tend to shift their focus more from kind of these daily survival kinds of issues to the broader issues of management of the economy and employment. And so that seems to be one of the things we're seeing in Malawi. Kenya, we also see over on the right that food shortage and famine has decreased substantially as an issue there. There's been smaller increases on a number of areas, crime and security, but the issue that's really displacing others in Kenya has been a large increase in concerns about corruption in the country. So you can, and we've got these kinds of charts for every country that we can share for people who are interested in looking at your own country in more detail. Yet another way we can cut this is sort of by looking issue by issue. And so that's the last thing I'll do here, which is to take one of the issues and look at where countries are on it. So this is looking at specifically the most important problem of management of the economy. And this looks by country at the proportion in round 9 who mentioned that as one of their top 3 priorities. You can see again 29% across all countries, but that average hides a huge range across countries, from 92% in Tunisia, and I'm going to move this down to just 6% in South Africa and 7% in Lesotho. So a really enormous range on this indicator of how much priority people place on it. You've got Tunisia, Sudan, and Malawi all really prioritizing this issue, and you have at least 8 or 10 countries where it's 10% or less mentioning the issue. So a really broad range. And then, sorry, my cursor. There we go. And if we look at the change in this issue over time, again, this is comparing countries in round 5 and countries in round 9, so over a decade. This doesn't show all of the countries. Countries that are not shown here did not show a significant change in the prioritization of this issue, but the countries shown here did. On the left, we have only one country, Uganda, where where management of the economy was mentioned much less frequently, from 24% down to 11%. In all of the countries in the group on the right, you can see it was mentioned by more people in some countries, there's a fairly small difference, but if you look over on the far right, you see quite a number of countries where the priority on this issue has shot up by nearly 40% in Zambia, Tunisia, Senegal, Ghana, Sierra Leone, and Mauritius. So countries where, excuse me, this issue is really gaining in priority. We've done those kinds of evaluations for a couple of other priority issues. Education, you can see on the left, a declining issue in Sierra Leone, Zambia, Botswana, South Africa, several other countries, but a significantly increasing issue in a number of others, shown on the right, Eswatini, Tunisia, Guinea, and Uganda especially. And the same going for corruption. Quite a number of countries where the priority on corruption has dropped, in about 9 or 10 countries, but 5 or 6 where it has increased, led again, as we mentioned in the previous chart, by Kenya, increases in Kenya. So that gives you some idea of the different ways we can cut and look at and evaluate the numbers on most important problems. I now want to turn to looking at how people assess government performance. And I'm going to start with a context piece, a somewhat troubling bit of context, to be honest. We've asked since round 5, we've asked people about what they would say about the direction, whether their country is going in the right direction or the wrong direction. And you can see that over the past decade, this is looking again at the 30 countries that we can track across that decade. There's been a steady, continuous increase in the percentage saying that the country's going in the wrong direction, which is up almost 20 points, and a decrease in those saying it's going in the right direction. People used to be about evenly split on this question, and now wrong direction leads right direction by more than a 2-to-1 margin. So it gives you context on sort of what the public mood is on how things are looking in their countries overall. We can then look at this question that we have where we ask people, how well or badly would you say the current government is handling each of the following matters, or haven't you heard enough to say? This reports the percentage who said the government was handling the matter fairly or very well. And we've grouped them again according to sort of broad categories of economic issues, social service issues, governance issues, and environment issues. You can see the highest ratings, and the only rating in round 9 where governments got more than 50% positive ratings was on the promoting the equal rights and opportunities for women. Overall, social services, though, does generally reasonably well compared to other categories, and fairly consistently well. The area where people clearly, again, have the most complaints is in economic management. Managing the economy, 27%, creating jobs, 20%. So fairly low ratings overall on the economic issues that people are giving. Some further context about a couple of other questions we have on economic conditions and how perspectives have changed. The gold bars on the left are the round 5 again, and the red bars on the right are the most recent round 9 surveys. And we asked people about the condition of the economy, and these are the proportions saying things are not good. So on the left, we have the proportion saying the country's present economic conditions are fairly or very bad, increase of 13 points. Much less change in people's assessments of their own living conditions, but an increase of 5 points in the percentage saying that they are fairly or very bad. And then we also, the bars on the right are a question about whether the current country's current economic conditions are better or worse than they were 12 months ago. And we see that it's gone from 37% saying they've gotten worse in the last year to 59%. So a big decline there of people feeling somewhat pessimistic about the direction of their economy. This chart compares the issue ranking, which are the purple bars, the ones I talked about in the previous section, where we look at what the most important problems are. Again, you can see I've ordered them according to that. Unemployment is first, management of the economy, health, water, infrastructure, on down through that same set of issues. And then the green bars are those who give the government a positive rating on handling of that issue. What you can see is that the topmost priorities over on the left, unemployment and management of the economy, are also the areas where, unfortunately, governments are getting their poorest performance rankings. But this middle category, where we talk about social services, health, water, education, tend to be where governments are getting their highest performance ratings. So real differences across issues, but again, just another way of seeing that the economic issues are where people are feeling the most pinch and the most challenge. This looks at the ratings of government performance on management of the economy. Again, a 39 country average of 27% positive, but going up to 61% in Tanzania, 55% Mali, a handful of countries where majorities give positive ratings, but a number of countries, where the ratings less than 10 or 15% are getting positive ratings. We can also look at how those performance ratings are changing over time. This compares in the pink the round 5, I'm sorry, to the blue in round 9. You can see that on almost every issue, there's been a decline in ratings of government performance. I will say on one of this, I think one of the questions we always ask when we look at questions like this over time and how people are rating performance is, what is driving the changes? Is it that performance is actually worse on these areas, or is it that people's expectations and standards have gotten higher, so they're measuring against a higher bar? I think both things probably play a role, but it's certainly something to look at in terms of trends. The one area where we see actually a significant positive increase in performance ratings is on providing a reliable supply of electricity. And I'm going to take that one and break it down by country. This shows you in the light green the performance for providing electricity in 2011 versus the dark green, which is round 9, the most recent surveys. And then the bars over on the right show the change during that period. And what you can see is that this is a topic where there's a handful of countries. We actually have 5 countries where there's been double-digit declines in performance on this issue, led by a huge decline in South Africa. I think it's no secret the challenges with electricity supply in South Africa. A couple of others, Sudan and Sierra Leone, with also large declines, Malawi, and up at the top, Mauritius, with smaller declines. But then you can see that almost all other countries have increases, and it's, I think, close to 20 countries that have quite significant positive increases on this indicator. So it seems to be one of the areas where people are really registering strong sense of success in most countries, but with a couple of notable exceptions, as we can see. So I'm going to leave it at that and hand back over my sorry, my keyboard just doesn't want to work quite. There we go. I want to hand it back over to Bonnie to wrap up, and then we can open it up for questions and discussion. Thank you. Bonnie?
Thank you, Caroline. As indeed Caroline has pointed out, I think we have tons and tons of data, not only on the topics that we have presented here, but also on a range of other topics. And we can also break down some of these findings by country, disaggregate by different demographic, socio-demographic categories. Education, I think, in here we've in Caroline's presentation, she's divided it by, for example, looking at rural, urban, lived poverty, but we can disaggregate it in multiple ways. We've been talking about round 9 surveys. We will be actually we'll be soon launching our 10th cycle of surveys, starting later this month. We hope to launch the 10th round of surveys in Uganda and in Cote d'Ivoire, and our goal is to cover up to 42 countries. So we will be expanding beyond the 39 that we have been presenting here. Some of the new topics that we will be bringing in round 10 I already mentioned some of these earlier, include access to justice, sexual and reproductive health rights, migration, borders and trade, which has, become quite a major topic to the extent that some of our stakeholders are actually asking us to make this one of the permanent or tracking topics. We will be looking at globalism and Africa's role in the world. We will be bringing in an expanded module on poverty, as well as looking at cost of living. But in there, we will also be looking at issues of remittances and how much they are assisting or contributing to family well-being. We will be having an expanded module on climate change and energy transition. We will be asking a new set of questions on gender equality, public health systems, and we will also have an expanded module on the youth. Of course, we are always grateful to the stakeholders we are working with, but we're also as we look ahead, we would also like it to increase country coverage. You saw the map that I showed earlier. It has that white kind of chasm in the middle of Africa. So we would want to cover as many countries if possible, all the countries on the continent, but of course, we remain mindful about the potential changes to access in some of the current countries where we're currently working. So as we expand, it's also possible that we might not be able to go back to some of the countries where we've already been working. We also have plans to expand our samples. Our samples currently, as I said, we're only focusing mostly on 18-year-olds and above, but we would also we will be piloting in around 10 expanded expanded samples of 16 and 17-year-olds, so that we can also compare their views and how they compare and contrast with those aged 18 and above. We do hope to get assistance to fund our existing publications on topics of special topics, or indeed on countries of interest. We do produce hundreds of publications and analysis on more than 20 topics. And if you are any of you are looking for information on a specific topic, or indeed a specific country or a set of countries or region, we are always available to help help you find that. We also wanted to do bespoke analysis on specific topic or countries. So we have masses, and by that really masses. So when we go back to 1999 when we started, we've conducted more than about 350,000 personal interviews. So we have really tons and tons of data that have not been analyzed, and every aspect of indicator, we certainly have that, and we can do that kind of analysis. So again, I'd like you to extend that invitation that if there's a topic or issue where any of you would like us to, you'd like you to know a lot more, please let us know, and what data we have. We can even explore existing data in new ways or greater depth. So again, do let us know, reach out, and we'll be happy to work with you. We also welcome requests for presentations or training for yourselves, so indeed staff members or colleagues on AB findings, again on all the topics that we are looking at. And we are always happy. Caroline really does lead the capacity building as well as the analysis part of Afrobarometer, and together, with other colleagues within the wider network, we were available to demonstrate how to use or indeed understand the Afrobarometer data. One of our signature again outputs is we do have we have an online data analysis tool that is available to use, and we'll be very happy to demonstrate to any interested parties how to analyze the data online without the need for any particular software. And indeed, we also welcome suggestions for topics for what we call country-specific questions. So though we do have a standard questionnaire that we use across country. We also, across all the countries, we also do allow space for questions that are on specific and special topical issues in each of the countries where we work, and we welcome suggestions from different stakeholders and would like to extend, I think, that offer as well for any of you to make suggestions on any topics of interest that might be specific to countries, and we will be quite happy to consider them alongside other special topics. I'd like us to end here and invite, I think, questions, comments, and suggestions. And once again, to thank you for your attention and having us today. Thank you so much. Over.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Bonnie and Caroline. That was really, really interesting and very informative. And I know there is a lot of data behind what you've just presented. So the floor is open. Let me now invite people to come in. You can raise your hand, or you can just notify that you want to speak, and we'll let you in.